What's up, guys? I'm your host, Lucie, and this is Eventually It All Connects. I'm here with a friend slash, I guess, mentor in the creative side, not life, creative side. What are you gonna say?
No, just let's keep it on the creative side. Not that I won't give you life advice, but still.
That's not what I asked for when I signed up for this friendship. And yeah, I'm here with Gervaz, Lushaju. He's very popular. I don't know, you may know him. But yeah, so what I normally do is I start out with a question that I ask every single one of my guests.
Okay.
And the question is there a time in your life where you didn't know it then, but are now realizing that eventually it all connected to today?
Yeah, so I guess the example that I will give is when I went through a time when I dropped out of university to go and do a different
Why are all
course.
creators do this? Why do they all drop out of
I mean, I dropped out to go to do another degree. I'm not one of those people like I'm giving up on the system. I don't want to be a typical academic. No, it was I dropped out of university. I went to a different university. A lot of turmoil, like rift with my dad, but yeah, it and I can't say like it didn't seem like it didn't connect. I think I didn't know the way it would connect, but I felt like when that happened, I still felt like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So it wasn't the I guess the feeling of just like what's going on wasn't there as much, but it did end up connecting and taking me to places that I did not foresee at all. Yes.
That makes sense. So you're just like, oh, but okay, specific, be like more specific.
Okay, more specifically, I was studying, I did architecture for 2 years. I dropped out. I went to study textile design because that's the thing that I thought that this is the thing that I'm going to do. This is the person I'm going to become. I'm going to be designing clothes, fabrics, all that stuff. And I started working in that space. I had a clothing workshop. I went to work for a furniture company and I was designing the prints for the fabrics. I was printing the fabrics like on the machine there, and that's what I thought I would do. But then slowly I'd started to do photography. That was a byproduct of doing the clothing stuff because fashion is a very visual industry, and you need to have your stuff photographed basically to get it out there. But then I wanted it done a certain way, and I couldn't find someone who could do it quite the way I envisioned. And I started doing some photography, and it snowballed and it derailed everything into a whole different direction. And then I became a photographer, videographer, graphics, digital visuals guy on top of everything else. And that I did not see. While I was doing my degree, I was just like, yeah, this is the thing. That happened like midway through that. I started doing photography towards I think my 3rd or 4th year of the 4-year program. But I did not think that it would become one of the primary things I do over everything else. But I wouldn't have gotten there if I'd not left architecture to do textile design, which then took me into photography.
That's interesting. So, obviously, looking back, you're like, yeah, that's the reason why, I'm doing what I am doing today.
In terms of purpose, or just in terms of sequence of events?
I guess sequence of events.
Sequence of events, I could kind of okay, so this happened and this happened and this happened. That's how I ended up here. But yeah.
Because if you had just stuck to if you didn't drop out, and if you just stuck to the architecture, then you would have not.
I can't really say if I would have or not have ended up here. Because I feel like there are things that if you I'm a person who likes to try a bunch of things, and that means it might have been a different amount of time, but I think if I had kept the same mentality of trying different things, it would have sort of just led me to the general set of creative things that I like to do. Yeah.
That is very interesting. It's good to know. So today's topic is one that people will probably be interested in. Probably the one that will get the most views.
Is that why you're doing it? For the views?
Doing it because people need to know from a perspective of a guy that is single. On what love is. So the first question I actually have is, has your definition of love changed over time?
This is a hard one because the answer is probably yes, but probably only because I never really like had to, in the past, just like sat down and just like, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Baby, don't hurt me. But I've never had to sort of sit down and define it. And I think by the time I was thinking about it in any significant way, that my definition had already leaned largely to what I believe as a Christian. So, yeah, I would say like before I just hadn't thought about it pretty much, like, but what is love? And then afterwards, by the time I was thinking about it more deeply, it had leaned towards a very Christ-centered sort of God-based idea of what love is.
So before, like, let's say in your early 20s or even teenage years, like, obviously your definition then and now are completely different, but is it like because of
Like why?
pursuing your relationship with Christ? So you're like, wait, so you look at it from...
I think for me it's also partially because I went to a bunch of boys' schools from 1 from 6, and some people have had their early relationships at that time, and I didn't have any, so I think I'd never thought about it. And then after that, I started getting deeper in my faith. So by the time I'm thinking about it, I'm already thinking about it in the context of my faith. So I think there's people who've had to think about it like as this thing outside their faith, and then later on maybe had to think about it in the context of their faith. Or some people treat it very separately, like the love I have, the romantic love I have out there, and the love that I see and talk about in my faith are two different things. But for me, I think because I had to starting to think about it happened after I started leaning into my faith. That's the context I've primarily thought about it in.
Yeah. I mean, even like the whole faith, it's interesting how people like separate the whole faith and romantic, because I'm like, even like God talks about like romantic relationships. Doesn't per se be like, oh, like romantic whatever, but he talks about like husbands and wives, which...
Okay, this came up I was on a panel for a Valentine's Day event. I don't know if you were there, but I talked about how the Bible doesn't talk a lot about romantic love, at least the nature in which people find it and engage. And although how it talks about love in principle still applies to everything you do in romantic love, the ideas of patience, kindness, goodness, all those things they transfer over the same. I think personally, I think it's because there's a lot of there's two things. There's a lot of culture and a lot of personal decision making that goes into it that is kind of your personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And it won't tell you like this is how you should go out and take someone on a date. But you will still want to treat that person with respect. You still want to be kind. You still want to be generous. Like everything that you're trying to do, you will do through the lens of however love is defined in the Bible. However you're living that love out. So I think it isn't talked about as much, but I think because there's a very personal element to how it will be lived out, but you've been given the confines around which to live that out in.
Yeah, but I mean, even with like it mostly talks about like marriages, not really like, because obviously people say like you'd never find you dating in the Bible, but it talks about like, hey, husbands should do this to their wives and wives should do this to their husbands, and then like even the general sort of love, like, because when he didn't really specify it to like romantic, it's like with everyone, or like the whole love is patient, love is kind, and the fruits of the spirit is love, joy. So it's like, it's more general, but it's like you can apply it to that. So even with you saying the whole like people separate it, which I guess people have their own reasons or whatever, but it's like, I don't know how you would separate it, because at least like even for me, I would want someone to love me like Christ loves me. So it's like,
I don't separate it, but also, so this same idea came up on the panel of just like what they would call the world being selfish and its perspective being selfish. But I said like people in Christian marriages get a lot of criticism for, women at least, get a lot of criticism for dealing with things that they probably was like, why are you putting up with that?
the world would not deal with.
The world would not deal with, but then I think the nature of romantic love has a selfish component to it, and we don't want to acknowledge it most of the time, because it's just like everything about what we believe in the Christian faith is kind of about being selfless, and so just like this selfish component must be bad. But if you're loving someone as a Christian, if you're loving, I don't know, an orphan, a beggar on the street, like that can be selfless love. That person owes you nothing. Like you go and they say love your enemy because your enemy, even though they might actively want to harm you, loving them selflessly is loving them regardless of how you feel, regardless of what they've done to you. But someone who you're pursuing a relationship with and building a life together, there is room to say like, you know what, I'm expecting something back. I'm not necessarily loving to receive, but because of the nature of our relationship, something has to come back in my direction, at least at some point. Now, your partner might get into a space where they're not able to, but somewhere down the line, when you decided to have that kind of relationship with them, you would have been like, there's something I need back. I need to be treated with patience. I need to be treated with kindness. It might not be consistent, but the inclination of their heart has to be in that direction. If it's the way we love, the way Christ loves us, where it's just like, you know what, it's unconditional and it's open doors and everything. And sometimes even as Christians, we want to be like, you know, your partner should love you like that. And in a sense, they should. But because the additional component of your love is a romantic love, then there's something else that is in there that is on top of all of that. At the core of it, and this is an example that you can take with people who, let's say you're married, you commit yourself to a person, and for some reason, like their life goes in a very different direction. They develop a sickness and they become unable to move, they become paralyzed, whatever, and you enter a phase where it's just like, you know what, I committed to love this person. I'm going to love them in a Christ-like manner. They are not going to do anything for me. That it is enough that I'm honoring my commitment to them, and I'm going to love them even though they're not able to do anything in return. And that is a different thing. But if you're building something together, then that person has to put in some kind of effort. And I think that the effort factor does kind of overlap with how our relationship is with Christians and God, because we are unable to be perfect, but we need to try. If you stop trying, if you're just like, this is impossible, I can never get it right, I can never be the person God wants me to be, and you just give up, your relationship immediately deteriorates. It's the constant, I think there's an idea of stumbling forward, where you're falling, but you're not falling and staying in place, but you're moving forward. Similarly, if you have a partner, you're not going to be like this perfect partner, you're not going to get it right every single time. But if you show the inclination that I have an inclination to wanting to be committed to you, I'm trying to be in this relationship, that is something versus someone who you don't need anything from them. You're just like, you know what, you are like when you love a child, where it's just like they don't need to do anything. They exist and like feed me and do whatever, and you're just like, okay, and I'll do everything for you and I'll love you and I'll take care of you. It's a different kind of love.
That is really interesting. So basically, right now, you basically say that your definition of love is what it says in the Bible, basically, like that definition.
Yes,
it's
within those. It's based on those ideas.
What would you like tell someone who is not like? Would you tell them, be like, okay, like try and find it, like you have to like think about what the definition, or would you be like, hey, whether you're a Christian or not, I think it's good to.
I think in this case it's important to just add a caveat that everything that is talked about in the Bible about love being kind, about love being generous, about love not being self-serving. Actually, a good one is it says love is slow to anger. But that means that there's something on the other end of this love making you angry. There's something on the other end of this love needing you to be kind, needing you to be generous, so it wants something. Like it seems like, oh, go and look for this love. It seems like it's a perfect love. But that's God. God is perfect love. It says, the Bible says God is love. But when it comes to people, the other end is a person who is testing your patience, who is doing all these things. Like it's not, the love you're looking for in this case is twofold. One, it's inside you. It's your ability to be generous. It's your ability to be patient with them. It's your ability to be slow to anger and all those things. It's something you have to emulate. It's not like I'm going to go out and find someone who is that way, because if you find that person, it means potentially you're the problem. You are the one who is causing them to be patient and kind and having to be slow to anger because they have to deal with you.
Yeah.
So it's not something where it's just like, I'm going to go out and search for this perfect love. That love, I think, exists to love imperfections.
That's true.
And that means you're going to find someone and they are going to be imperfect in however they're going to be imperfect. And you're going to have to show that love. And you are going to try and build a love with them in which they are able to accommodate your inadequacies. It's the kind of love that goes into the equation knowing the other person has inadequacies. That's why you have to emulate slow to anger, generosity, all those things. And it's going in knowing that you are also imperfect. That's why you're seeking out a love that will be slow to anger with you and be kind to you and will be generous to you, because you need that grace and you need to offer it. Yeah.
But it's just one of those things I think I've realized in order to actually have a definition or know what love is, you kind of have to, what is it? Is it like, I don't know if it's like feed off of something else, but like have an example. So like, for instance, like, let's say with me, like, I base my love off of God. So I'm like, okay, I know this is what he says love is, so I'm going to have to follow that. And so it could be that, or it could be like, let's say, which is actually like a bad, probably a bad thing to do, but like someone's like, okay, I'm going to base my love off of my parents. That's hopefully they're in good marriage, and actually, because if you're divorced, that would also be a whole different thing. But it's like you kind of have to, I think it's harder to look for it or find it yourself more than, okay, let me base this off of something that I already know. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like something that I know exists that I can sort of apply to my life and my relationships.
I guess I accept that people largely, like even their perception of relationships is colored heavily by whatever relationships they know about, have been in, or have been subject to. And now from a Christian perspective, though, people are not the example. There may be good things that people are doing, and you have to have the wisdom to pick out, like, that was a good thing, that was not a great thing, but they are not the example. So Christ is your example, God is leading you where you need to go. And it's, again, if we're talking about the romantic love, there is a risk there of just like, we try, but we're unable to love people in the perfect way that God does. Because God doesn't need us. So there's that expectation of just like you're there, and this is what I want good things for you, but those good things don't add some kind of value to me.
That's true.
And as human beings, like, as much as we want to be like, like we're sustained by God, but there's something about being loved by other people that fills some part of us, and we like it, and we to some extent we can say we need it, and it's important that it exists. But I think having the framework of your love in general, of anything you claim to love or you want to show love to, or to determine, am I receiving love from this place? It could be like, okay, are these things happening based on my definition? If my definition is the biblical one, and it's like, is it being the way it is defined in the Bible? With the understanding that, of course, that person is not going to be able to do it perfectly, but is that the phrase that we use in Christianity, the posture of their heart?
That's true. Because I think I even came to realize, like, it's also the way people like grow up. So, for instance, let's say someone grows up in a household where the parents didn't really show that much love to each other. Obviously, they're gonna grow up and be like, okay, like hopefully they come to know that that's like not good, and they pursue Christ and figure out that love. But if you don't do that, or that doesn't happen, then you'd be like, oh, okay, what my parents did, because I grew up seeing this, this is normal. So it's like, even with, like, let's say, hopefully this doesn't trigger anyone, but it's like, let's say the dad is yelling at the mom, and the child obviously knows these two are together, and they're like, oh, that's normal, this is love, this is how love is supposed to be. So I think even in, like, when I was saying it, like, you have to base it off of like an example. That's sort of the example that we are sort of given, because obviously, like, when you grow up, you can't really be like, oh, like, I don't know, it's just, you can't really choose you can't choose your parents, but also you can't, like, be like, oh, they need to do X, Y, and Z, because you yourself don't know what love is. That's what you come to realize, or come to figure out, that even, like, in relationships, especially, like, whether it's loving relationships or loving friendships or whatever, you come to find out, like, oh, why is this person think this is okay, or why do they have this mentality? And it goes as deep as that's what they saw growing up. So obviously for them that's normal It's like going back to the root cause of why they think this way or why they think this is normal, basically.
I was going to say that there are things that I think sometimes we talk about them being, and sometimes they are like upbringing based, like that's where they come from. But I think sometimes people do not make room for just people's general failings as adults. Like at some point you become an adult and you just like, these are choices I made and I'm living in the outcome of my choices. Now there may be habits that you've built up that are hard to go back on because they've formed themselves pretty heavily at that point. But at a certain point, whether or not a person takes responsibility, they would have to realize that there are things in their relationships or the relationships that they're having or how they're having those relationships that have a lot to do with just choices that they made. Where it's just like, yep, and I've seen people who, they come from families that had a lot of traumatic experiences. And they come out better. They look at that thing and they're just like, you know what, I don't want it to be that way, I want it to be better. I've seen people who have come out from like, their parents seem happy together and and I say seem because I don't know, but they've been together a long time, they seem to be in a great relationship, and their kids have a hard time forming relationships and keeping the relationship going because I feel like upbringing does have a way it contributes, but I feel like it just hits different people in different ways. Like people see a thing and they're just like, okay, I'm going to do my thing better. Some people see a thing and they're just like, this is what people are like. And I think there's so many other things forming that experience and causing the way that it informs how that person takes it, that it's hard to track those things and be like, this person's parents were like this, so this person's going to be like this. It's not usually the case. But then again, if you're an adult and that's why people need to go to therapy. There are things that you just have to figure out, like, hey, I figured out there are things that I've carried over from how I grew up, or not even your parents. Sometimes you go to high school and you meet other people there and they tell you things and you get influenced by other people and you might need to unlearn some things and build a better life. Yeah.
That makes sense. Do you think love is a feeling or a choice?
I think it is a combination, but the base bit is a choice because your feelings are generally fickle. Like, they'll change based on how you felt that day, what the weather was like, what you had for breakfast. People can be influenced by the song that was playing in the moment and be like, you know what, it made me feel some kind of way. And then when that music wasn't playing, it was just like, was that experience all that, or did I just, was the lighting just dimmed just right, and it glanced off that person's skin some type of way, and it's a feeling. And feelings are, especially if you work in art, they're things that can be manipulated by a lot of things. People write whole movies and they will take you on a journey for 2 hours and 15 minutes and then it's done. So it's the choice part of it is there's a commitment component where at some point you won't feel that way and you'll need to choose the decision again and again and again. And you can also choose to stop and be like, I'm not going to love this person anymore. And I liken it to the feeling of trust, where people don't think about trust as a sometimes they think about it as a choice, and sometimes they have a general idea of like, I trust this person, and sometimes it's like, oh, I don't trust this person. And sometimes it'd be like someone does one thing, you loan them money one time and they never pay you back, and you stop trusting them. You kind of make a choice to just like, oh, when it comes to this thing, I can't trust this person anymore. And the feeling of like, you know what, I trust them goes away. But sometimes there are people who go back to the same place. They don't make the choice. They keep getting disappointed by the same person because they don't make the choice to stop trusting them. So with love, it's a bit like that, where there's certain feelings and ideas you can associate with a person and be like, you know what, yeah, I love this person. You sort of just made their decisions that I think it doesn't feel like a choice because you made them without sitting down and saying, I made this choice. Unlike maybe people who married a person where there is like a pivotal moment where you make a choice. But a good example is like people work certain jobs and they don't leave. They haven't really decided to stay, but they really never made a choice to not leave. And they've then made a decision to stay. But I think it's important to think about it as a choice. One, because there's a lot of your own responsibility that goes into it, where you realize, like, you know what, I made a choice to be with this person, and I'm responsible for that choice. And I've decided to deal with what comes, and I've decided there are things that will not be great, and I've decided to stay regardless, or I've decided to go. Like, the think about it as a choice also puts you in a position of, like, being responsible and accountable to the choice that you made.
Yeah.
But I think about it as a choice.
That makes
The
sense.
feeling part it's great, but it wanes. It comes, it goes. Some people talk about it as if it eventually goes away, and you're just left with the choice. But I feel like it's something that it comes and goes. There are days that you wake up and you won't feel like the person that you're with is the person you're the most in love with. But if you indulged just the feeling, I feel like you would never find yourself in a sustainable relationship. You just chase the next feeling, and someone else will come and make you feel some type of way for a day, and you'll be like, maybe this is it, and it'll just be an endless cycle.
Just feeling, yeah. Because I think I've come to, like, realize, because let's say you base your love off of your feeling, we would have a lot of breakups and messed up people in this world, because you're like, oh,
Well,
one day.
don't we? I mean, isn't that what's
Not
happening?
even more. Because then you'd wake up one day and be like, I feel like I don't love this person, and you go and break up with them. And then after that breakup, the next day you wake up and be like, wait, I actually do this. So it's like, it would be very messed up, a messed up world if we based our love off of our feelings. Whereas choice, you're like, okay, even though I don't love this person today, I choose to love them because I know that's just my feeling for today.
There may be and I've had this discussion before about people criticizing that definition because there are people who've taken it completely as a choice. People get into arranged marriages or just like, okay, I'm going to choose to be here and be with this person, even if I don't necessarily.
That's very, I don't know how, I mean, okay, if you're in that, I'm sorry, but.
But this is the thing, at some point, like a feeling in that particular instance for people at a certain time was a luxury. Not that they didn't feel things, but if you want to get into a stable relationship and all that, and you were waiting for a certain feeling to come along, and maybe like we live in a time where we have the luxury to travel and meet a bunch of different people and all these things, and maybe other people, they didn't even realize that, but there's just like the choices arose from whatever options that they were presented with. And it may have made out for a different kind of relationship, but there's this idea that we talk about like doing the actions and having the feelings follow. And it's a bit like, my favorite example is just going to the gym. Go to the gym, you hate it. It makes your muscles hurt, and it's uncomfortable, basically. But you've made a choice. And then over time, you start to enjoy the thing. You enjoy the benefits. You've associated a good feeling with a good choice, which I think people who've approached it in the choice in the past have learned to love good things. If they like, you know what, this is a good person to build a relationship with, they learn to love good things. Whereas there are a lot of people who, because you can't help who you have certain feelings for. So you might meet a person and you feel all the feelings for them, but they're a terrible person to be with. Because you liking them has nothing to do with the quality of the person they are. They make you feel some kind of way. And so it's not the compass to base your decision off of, but then it may have its place. Not that love should be completely a choice, but there is something to be said that for people who are in their minds, and I've met people like this, they're just like, I met someone and I chose them because they were the person that I felt like, this is a person that I could build a life with. They make sense to me in my head, and they made that choice, and it worked out great for them. And there are people who can work almost completely from a place like that. A good example I feel like is when people buy their phones, and the people are like, oh, but I need it to look like this and this color. And it's a very emotional, abstract decision when people make certain choices. And some people are just like, you know what, this suits my purposes, and I'm gonna get it, and they're gonna love it because it does all the things that they need it to do. And that's part of them, what they need for them to be able to love it, and it works. So the choice thing, as much as sometimes it gets a bad rep for being like this emotional, logical thing, I feel like there are things that could go hand in hand pretty well together. And it's important maybe not to drown too deeply in either one, but more so the feelings, because unlike choice, you can also wake up on a different day and make a different choice.
That's true.
As much as you might have a different feeling, but it's the way a feeling takes you is it's more unpredictable than a choice would. Yeah.
I think I even came to, when I was trying to think about it, with like, let's say romantic relationships, like specifically, I feel like it goes from feeling to choice instead of, well, I was actually going to ask you if it goes from feeling to choice or choice to feelings, because the reason I'm saying I think it goes from feelings to choice is because you start off with, oh, I love this person, I feel that, and you get into that phase, what they call the honeymoon phase, where it's like all excitement and feelings and oh my goodness. And then once you end that and come to, like, let's say you've been, I'm not saying that the honeymoon phase finishes, because it shouldn't, but you get to a point where it's like after, like, let's say 6 months to a year, where you've kind of gotten used to this person, and now you're just like, okay, it's not but it's just
I think it's a different way of thinking about it, but I feel like a lot of even what you said is still choice. It's the same thing with the job, where it might not feel like a choice, but it's the tiny little decisions that you make. You meet someone, so from a dude's perspective, I'm more likely to have to go up to a girl and ask her out. But her saying yes to a first date is a choice that she made.
That's true.
And a second and a third, her answering my texts every couple of times is a choice. Like, and sometimes I know for some cases, like, they might not be that into you, and maybe they might get into you more down the road, but it's because, and the idea of guarding your heart is because you might not have initially been like, you know what, yeah, this is the person, and then we sneak our way in. But for us to sneak our way in, you have to make certain concessions, and every single one of those concessions is a choice that you make, where it's just like, okay, I'll do this, I'll let them become a person who I tell certain things to. And all of these things will build a closeness, but you are allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
If you're a dude, every decision that you make from your end of trying to pursue, trying to buy something, trying to take her somewhere, trying to call her and, like, asking her how she is, it's a choice that you're making. And and hopefully you're aware that it's a choice leading up to something, where it's just like, I'm building an emotional expectation on the other end of this. So because it's a choice, all of those are choices that you're making, and because you could have made them not to do that. Because apart from the big old infatuation, crush feeling that you might have for a person,
I was gonna say that.
It's all those choices. I can have a crush from someone from a distance and just be like, nah, my crush, and then I just die with it. But I can make certain choices that will cause that crush, hopefully that person is in agreement, to manifest into something greater. And allowing that to happen is me saying, like, you know what, I want something more than seeing this person from a distance, than just being their friend or whatever it is. And all of those are choices that you've made that are leading you down a path. So it's feelings, but feelings lead to choices. It's hard to feel your way. Like, if I like a girl, if I feel some type of way about her, no matter how hard I just feel from a distance, it won't cause a relationship to just happen. A choice has to be made. And every progression down that step, that line, is a choice. And there are times where we'll decide, we as people in a relationship will decide to do something else together. Like, it goes on and on and on. So I feel like all of them are choices. I think it's just, are you being ruled by the feeling? Is the feeling dictating everything? Or are you being like, you know what, I think I want to go another step forward. I think I want to pursue something with this person. I think we should stop. I think we should stop here for now. Like, being in that, trying to bring yourself, because the moment you start liking someone, your objectivity just starts to go immediately. So trying to maintain any amount of, like, some kind of decision-making process as you do it would be great. Because people criticize me for this thing. We're just like, oh, you don't know what it's like, you've never been in a relationship. And I'm just like, yeah, but when you're in a relationship, you will be overwhelmed by the feelings and by and when I say feeling, I don't mean like, oh, I feel so intensely, I'm in love with this person. No. You also be overwhelmed, like, you're trying to make a decision, but you're very mad at the person you like. And it will affect how you're trying to make this objective decision. Someone's just like, you know, this is what you should do in this scenario. But it's hard to do that because of how you feel about that person in that moment. Maybe very angry, maybe very jealous, whatever it is. All of that will make it infinitely harder. But it goes back to the trying. Are you trying to make the right choice? Are you trying to still make, like, I know I feel a certain way, but I'm going to try and make the right decision? Same as going to the gym. You know that it feels a certain way, but are you going to stop trying to do the right thing or trying to do something that's good for you down the line because I'm overwhelmed by how bad it feels?
Yeah.
Or sometimes people are overwhelmed by how good it feels. Like it's the same thing where going back to a place of just like, oh, there's a choice I need to make here and I need to kind of think about it for 2 minutes, longer hopefully, but I need to think about it before I get this. If you know what impulse buying is like, it's a lot like that. Initially you get the feeling it's like, this shirt or this thing and just like, this phone just came out. And then if you think about it for longer than 2 minutes, I don't really need that phone. The phone I have right now is fine. Yeah, it's sleek and it came out in black and I love the color black and whatever it is, but maybe you don't need it. But you just have to stop. You just have to get out of that place of how it feels for long enough to be able to make a decision.
Yeah.
So.
I remember there's this one friend of mine that was actually told me this a while back. Actually, I don't know if you told me or a few other people. But anyways, he was just like, even with the whole choice and feeling, it's like you come to know that you love a person when they annoy you or when they make you mad. Because then you're just like, I love them as a choice, not a feeling. Because if I base it off of the feeling, I do not love them. But because I choose to love them and I want to be with them, then I'm staying with them. So I think ever since like you said that, I'm like, it's stuck in my mind, especially like with me, and now I'm just like, that's how you know you love a person. That's why like whenever even you get over that feeling and afterwards you're like, wow, I really actually do love this person because
I forgive you for making me cry the other day.
But yeah, this is actually one that I actually want to know. Like I get them confused myself, and I think a bunch of people probably get them confused. What's the difference between self-love and selfishness?
Well, I have a whole TED talk about this. I actually did do a TED talk, but it was about knowing yourself. But so on some level, selfishness, maybe just because of the term, also gets a bad rep. And I think any place of pure selfishness in anything is bad, even if it's completely for you. Like if you are, good example, going to the gym. Go to the gym and it's purely for you. It might be a bad thing. If you can extend the idea a little bit to be like, you know what, there are people who care about me and they want to see me happy and healthy. And this in part.
But wouldn't you want to see yourself happy and healthy?
Oh, it could be, but I'm saying any pure selfishness, when something is absolutely and completely for you, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's having kids, whether it's getting married, whether it's picking your partner, just like, you know what, this one will be good for me. Like you might even do nothing for them, but you're just like, you know what, this, for me,
This is it, yeah.
purely for my own selfish needs, yes. Like we are selfish people, in the sense that the person whose needs we're immediately always aware of is ourselves. You know what your hunger feels like, you know what your anger feels like, you know what your jealousy feels like. You're aware that your body needs to breathe, needs to eat. When it's cold, you know when it's cold for you. So we can't help but be very keenly aware of our own personal kind of selfish needs. But operating purely from a place of selfishness is, I think, what's problematic. Because as Christians, it's okay to have a complete idea of selflessness, because technically we can say we don't belong to ourselves. God made us, God gave us this life, so we don't belong to ourselves. So what is there to be? There's no self to be selfish with, because it's not yourself, it's God's self. Yeah. So that mentality can work, but how often do we treat and act like we are God's selves and not ourselves? We act like we are really the personal owners of these bodies and these souls, right? And we do whatever we want with them. So, and I feel like doing that is kind of living in a place of that pure selfishness, but having the idea of just like, you know what, there is a self, and that I need to preserve that self. I need to love that self. I need to gift that self. I need to there are people who just don't give themselves things. Where it's just like, you know what? How can I be gentle with that self? Am I being gentle with it? There are people who, so this is the same thing I referred to in the TED Talk, where I say, there are people who will say things. When I was working as a clothing designer and again as a photographer, there are people who make comments about themselves and their bodies that are so harsh. Like, will be like, you know, I have like terrible, like flappy arms or something, or they'll be like, make me look this way, or I have a good side and a bad side. I'm just like, imagine if someone else, you just came and told like, you have a bad side, like that side of your face is the bad, like it would be terrible. But the way we feel about saying these things about ourselves is a little bit different. But that's not really being gentle and kind to ourselves. Yeah. So the instinct to lean towards the self, one, it exists one way or the other. It's the reason why you flinch when something comes close and looks like it's about to hit you. Self-preservation. There's a way that you have a certain kind of selfishness, but I think any decision made from a place that is purely of selfishness is usually what's problematic. But in a dynamic of being in a relationship, even when you take care of your body, you're taking, as Christians again, we take care of it because you've been given the body to steward, to take care of. So, you know, clip your nails, you know, make sure your hair and make sure you're clean, do all these things because you're taking care of the body. Because you are thinking about it as like, oh, I have to take care. It's actually a funny idea when you say like when you say take care of yourself to yourself, which part of you is telling itself? Like is there yourself, then a third part of yourself that looks at yourself and just like, you know, when you take care of that. It's a very interesting like internal existential thing to think about. But that thing where it's just like if you are really thinking of yourself and your body and who you are as belonging to God, it should technically be impossible to be selfish because you don't own any of it. You're just like, you know what, I got to take care of this thing that I've been given, I have a responsibility over. But I think true and problematic and bad selfishness arises from a place of either thinking completely like me, mine, and then on top of that, when it's purely out of that place. So even when you're with another person, you're in a relationship, and you're just like, you know what, I need a moment. I need to go and sit down and clear my head because I need to be by myself for a bit so I can be a better person when I'm with you. You are taking time for yourself, but it's also for how you will exist in relationship. It's a selfless sort of selfishness. So even things can be for the self and not be selfish, but when it's pure selfishness, then I feel like that's bad for you and for other people.
Yeah. That makes sense. Actually, this is probably going to be the last question because, again, we could probably be here and talk for hours. How do you maintain deep friendships or even relationships in a busy life?
I feel like you've not been talking as much, but...
This is Gervaz's podcast from now on, just so you know.
It feels like the Gervaz podcast where you just listen to me answer questions.
Joe Lucie who? I'm not the host anymore.
Joe Lushaju. How do you answer? How do you answer this question? How do you do it?
I mean, it's just trying to, it's more of just making time for people and trying to balance that social and busy life. So let's say you have a whole career and your job is very demanding. It's looking at that and being like, okay, if I'm in a relationship, because you also have to make sure, you can't be like, oh, like I'm in a relationship, oh, the person would understand, you know, like it's, even if I don't spend like a whole month with them, even if we're in the same city, they should understand and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's like, yes, your job is important, but so is that relationship. And you should make sure that at some point in the week that you spend that time with that person. Whether it's like, okay, let me, even if it's like an hour or so, like let me spend that time. Whether, I don't know, it could be texting, it could be talking on the phone, it could be meeting physically, face to face.
You're talking about just like not like a, because I was thinking about like a marriage, just like, you know, you should text your husband like once a week, it's just at least.
No, I mean when you're living together,
boyfriend girlfriend relationship.
No, I meant dating, because I mean living together, it's, I mean even with that you sort of still have to, because you can like.
Oh, you definitely do.
Realize that you're not like, you'd be like, oh, we live together, it's fine. But kumbe, the other person actually, you're not spending time with them because you have a whole 9 to 5 job, and then you come back home and you're tired, and then you're just eating and then going to sleep. And that's your Monday to, let's say, Saturday. And then Sunday is the only rest that you have, but you spend that time to go and be with other people, or to socialize, or to actually rest the entire day. So it's just like, even during that time, you have to make sure that you're like, okay, I'm coming back home in a marriage. I'm coming back home, and even if it's just for 20 minutes, just, talking to my wife or talking to my husband, saying like, hey, like, how's your day? Just actually intentionally doing that. Obviously, again, dating is different because you're not living together, and that's kind of harder than marriages. So when it comes to like even dating, you have to make sure that, hey, let me see how my week is, and if it seems really busy, where can I fit in time for this person? Especially if the other person's love language, or even yours, is quality time, because that's also another struggle, or another thing you need to be careful with, or even physical touch. So like, there's that, and then like, let's say, for instance, even in friendships, it could be as simple as calling the person, like just making that effort. Like, let's say you have like a deep friendship with someone, which was the original question, and you want to maintain that friendship. You're like, hey, you know what? Let me make time once a week to just check up on this person. Because like, obviously with friendships and relationships, it's different because relationships are much deeper than friendships are. But I think even for me, if I had like friends or a friend that would just, even once a week, be like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how's your week been? Let's just chit chat and catch up. That would be like us maintaining it, or that would make me feel like, yeah, we may not see each other every single day, but at least we're keeping that communication with that. So it's just about trying to manage
your time.
Your time, and also balance it as well.
I do feel like I've been using this comparison a lot lately, but I went to Bukoba, where I'm tribally from, in December.
I'm also Haya as well. I'm from Bukoba. We're both from the same tribe.
Well, Haya forever.
Different places, though. We're not related.
I went to Bukoba, and like because people are, if you go to the village and people are not working like 9 to 5 jobs, like you'll be at home and people will come and visit, like 4 or 5 people a day, maybe even. And in urban spaces, in urban globalized spaces, we live in a space where like your personal pursuit of like your well-being and whatever is takes a lot of your time, and really this is usually your job. It'll take 40 hours of your week, more than 40 hours for some people, and it leaves you exhausted, and it's very hard to now have time for relationships. You find a lot of adults have this thing where just like, we should hang out, we should hang out, we should hang out, we should hang out, we should really hang out, we should hang out, and you only see each other during weddings and funerals. And it's just like until the big things happen, or maybe you'd go
that would sort of force you
to see each other, because we spend a lot of our times working, and working does not incentivize building relationships. It's also, people don't get super well along with their coworkers. Not because their coworkers are bad people, it's just that environment, the thing that's being prioritized in that moment is like, make that money. Not necessarily not even for you, not salary, like you're making money for some company, whatever. It's not, relationship isn't what is the thing that, it's not the thing that's primarily encouraged in those spaces. So one, like you said, it's about making time. Whereas we find when I'm over there, and when I go to Bukoba, I'm not really working. I'm there to go and visit family and stuff. But people there, I feel like, have richer relationships because they have more time to pour into those relationships. It's the same idea of like, you want to get married and you go to someone's house and you tell them like, hey, I'm so-and-so from this family, I want to marry your daughter and stuff. But there's a whole pre-existing relationship there, versus in urban spaces where you'd go, and if I want to go and marry someone, they might not know who I am, and they might be seeing me that day for the first time because there was just no time to build a relationship. People date people for years and only introduce them to their parents shortly before they get married. Oh, I will accept that it's also because like your parents don't want to just see some random guy.
They do know this one's serious.
Just like, this is the serious one. But even then, like, just like the way we've become minimalists in how we have relationships. by and large, and that if you're trying to have deeper friendships and relationships, it's really making time, which goes well hand in hand with just going to shift your priorities. You have to decide that, you know what, having a better relationship with certain people is going to be more important than me building on a plot in Goba or whatever it is, because you can work hard and achieve those things, but your relationships will suffer unless you have certain kinds of jobs. There's certain kinds of jobs that allow for that, but by and large, the harder you work and the more individually successful you become, your relationships tend to pay the price. Some people, I know people who've done it. I've done it a little bit like this, not on purpose though. Where there's time I worked very hard, didn't have great relationships, and then I shifted a bit in how I worked, and it made better room for relationships. But it's one of those things where you have to really, really evaluate what your value system is. Like, I place importance on this friendship, and I place importance on this relationship, and doing this one thing here that's going to make me some money, that's going to advance my career, that's going to do all these other things, isn't as important as this other thing, as much as it may feel that way. And maybe the other person kind of has, for some relationship, the other person has to kind of feel that way, because it won't make as much sense for them to, not in a reciprocating kind of way, but you'd be like, you know what, I'm going to cut out time to spend half a day with you, but then that other person has to have half a day to spend with you. Because you can also just be both busy in your jobs, and you just send each other memes and reels all the time, and that becomes the nature of your relationship, and you never do anything meaningful together. You never have shared experiences. Like, there are people who've not gone on a trip since the one trip that they went on in primary school, and that's it. It just never grows because there's no time. There's no time because you don't make relationships a priority.
Yeah.
And it's in so many ways. It's people's relationship with their loved ones. It's people's friendships, people's relationship with their parents. There are people who, like my dad has, I think, 8 maybe siblings, and they have kids, and some kids have kids, and it's so many people. But I think he knows his family better than I know some of the generation just below him. And I think it's because of that. Like, in school and stuff hasn't helped. Like, I do have some relationships with people who are not related to me, better than I have relationships with people who are in some cases. But if I was like, my dad would be like, someone in Dar who he went to school with and who was a good friend of his is having a funeral. Please go to the funeral and represent me. But he's maintaining a 30, 40-year-old relationship probably. And it's that important to call and to send someone, and not just be like, let's send some. There are people now who just be like, I sent a contribution and I can't make it, but it's one of those things that people do that with weddings even. But relationship, like how much are you willing to cultivate something to get it to grow? Because there's a lot of room for surface relationships to happen now, because you have the faux idea of being in relationship because you have a phone, because you text each other. But are you in a relationship? You don't see each other. You don't give a person a hug. You don't go and visit them. There are people who have friends and they don't know where each other live. Like going and seeing where the person lives. If you're not
long distance, though. Because long distance.
If you're not long distance, yes. They're long distance, that might be different, yes. But there are people who you have the opportunity to actively cultivate a relationship with them.
Yeah.
And you don't, because you're busy working, because you're busy doing things that they edify you as the individual. They build you up as the individual. And that's not bad. And I think it is a difficult life these days to be like, I have this job that wants 40 hours a week. I have my passion project on the side that I kind of want to do. I have my hobbies. I still want to go out on the weekend to occasionally have fun. My parents want me to do certain things, and I still have some friendships I want to build, and I have to find time for all of these things. It's a difficult way to live, and the world we live in urban globalized spaces is not a relationally favorable environment. So you have to work harder to have meaningful relationships.
That's true. But yeah, so actually I was going to add this a little bit, and then we have to actually go to verses and wrap this up.
Go to commercial. Okay.
So I was even thinking of that, and when you're talking about like the whole priorities and importance, I think it brought me back to even like people's relationship with God, because it's like, even with that, I'm not gonna lie, I struggle with that. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I struggle with putting God in my time of day, in a sense where, like, I keep, like, saying, I'm like, yes, God is number one. He's the first on my list, blah, blah, blah. But if, again, I feel like it's a lot of people and I'm not the only one. But if you look at my, like, daily life, you find I've gone, like, a whole week without praying or a whole week without reading the Bible. And it's just like, do I really put him, like, it's sometimes even, like, at the end of the week or during the week, you kind of have to reevaluate your life and reevaluate what you're doing, because it's like, okay, I want to make God the first person and make God, like, above everything, to a point it's like, even if me putting him as a part of my day is going to, okay, not per se, like, make me get fired, because God also doesn't want you to lose your job. Especially if he puts you there.
But then maybe it's time to go. I mean, I
no, in a sense,
know
people
what you
can use
mean.
it as an excuse to be like, well, I want to spend time with God, that's why I'm late to work. It's like,
I mean,
no,
if
you
that's
can work
what
up
he's, because that's the thing. Maybe it's, what does it mean to really have him as a priority? How bad is, he gave you the job, right? So he'll give you another one. Like, if you know inherently you're not trying to run away from work, but
that's what I'm saying. It's different. Like, if God specifically, like, tells you, it's like, hey, like, put me above to a point where you have to, like, actually do that, then yeah. But it's not like God's like, okay, be late for work. I want you to be late for work. He's like, okay, if you put me on top, if you, like, let's say you have to be work at 8, wake up at 6 or 5 and spend an hour with me.
Stop sleeping so late at close to midnight.
Yeah, and so it's just like, even that, but not even like in the beginning or end of your workday, like even in between, if you have a lunch break, God's like, hey,
and that's the thing, you know, it's harder, but it's also supposed to be easier, because unlike your friends and other people who are in other countries sometimes, and you have to call, like, God is with you all the time. So
you can literally like right now I can talk to him and be like, God, hi, and he's
cutting
there.
Out the time. And I think maybe it's because of that we take it a little bit more for granted and we become bad at it, because he is more accessible than our other relationships are. It's more open-ended. There's less, like, you know what, I didn't call this person, now they're going to get mad at me. It's supposed to be easier, and I feel like maybe because we take it for granted so much, we make it harder for ourselves. But it's the one relationship that we should be able to step back from everything else and be like, you know what, I need to give time to this thing because I believe it's more important than everything else.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so the Bible verses I have for today, the first one, there's a lot of Bible verses on love. Like, I feel like almost the whole Bible is a love story.
It is.
So it's kind of hard to just pick a few. So I think this is a very well-known one, and one that whenever I think of love, I think of this verse. And it's John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son.
Typical Christian.
That whoever believes in him will never die.
Oh, okay.
Have eternal.
For
like,
God
it's very,
so loved the world.
Like, it's very, like,
it's that one and the wedding one. What is it? Is it Corinthians? The wedding one. Love is
chill.
Okay.
Calm down. Just chill.
Every wedding and.
For patience. This person doesn't have patience.
Read us the verse.
But no, so I actually like that one because it always reminds me, like, whenever I think about love or think about even other people loving me or me loving other people, it's like God literally loved the world so much that he gave his one. Like, I know there's no greater love than that. Like, I know you guys can't attest that someone in your life has actually died for you, legitimately said, I'm going to die for you, and choose to, not because also the circumstances where you get in a crash and then they block you and then they pass away and you're survived. No, like, literally, it's like, if there was someone that's like, who, like, someone pointing, let's say, again, I don't know if this is very violent, but someone like pointing a gun at you and your significant other, your friend, it's like, which one should I choose? Like, who should I kill? Would you voluntarily say, just kill me? Which some people would probably be like, yes, but would we really, though? I don't think humans would die for one another.
I mean, even if they did, I think it's still, we're human beings, so we are inherently selfish.
Yeah, that's,
so
which, again,
to know that it's being done out of pure selflessness. Where if in our case, like, God didn't need to do it. It's not like it's just like, oh, you need me to do that. I'll do this for you because you did this for me, or because I like you so much. But
he did it because he did it without expecting anything in return.
It's pure selfless love.
Like, he's literally like, I'm doing this, and whether you follow me or not, I'm still doing this for you. But yeah, so that's a verse I will be forever engraved in my head and that I love so much. And that still will put me in awe because I've told people this, but like it still amazes me that someone loves me that much that he would actually do that choosingly. But yeah, so there's that one, and then there's also 1 John 4:7 verse 8, and it says, "Love comes from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God," which makes sense because God is love. So if you have love, it's from God because He's created us to love one another. And if you love, you're born of God. But it's very straightforward. There's no need to explanation of it. It's very direct.
Very direct.
I remember I was telling, I think other people also that have been in the podcast, and people probably heard, the Bible is very direct. It will not zigzag along street. It's like, I'm telling you as it is. There's no trying to find what it means or explain. It's literally what it is. But yeah, and then there's 1 Corinthians 13:4-5. It says, "Love is patient, love is kind."
There we go. It's just waiting for it. Just,
It isn't jealous. It does not brag. It isn't arrogant. It isn't rude. It doesn't seek its own advantage. It isn't irritable. It doesn't keep a record of complaints. Which that last one, oh my goodness.
Whoever says that these two should not wed, say it now or forever hold your peace.
I object.
Go hand in hand.
No, I think like that's why even like being in like friendships or relationships, I kind of also have to go back to this verse because obviously sometimes you get jealous, sometimes you get like boastful or prideful, sometimes you get arrogant and rude. So when you have this engraved in your heart and you're like, love is patient, it does not get jealous, it does not brag, and you're just like, okay, Jesus, I get it, understood. But I think again, the last one is the one that's very hard because it said it does not keep records of complaints, meaning does not hold grudges, which sometimes can be a struggle.
Sometimes.
Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I used to badly keep grudges. But again, pursuing my relationship with Christ and reading verses like this, I'm not 100% good at it, but I'm better than I was before.
As people, I feel like it's we bad things stand out in our minds more than good things because our brains are hard set to avoid the bad thing. So we remember the bad thing because we don't want it to happen again. But that makes us potentially very grudge-holding people. It's just hard
That's
to forget.
true. It's very hard sometimes. But yeah, so that was it. This is very long.
Do we shake hands? What happens?
Probably
in that?
no.
Oh, okay.
You've not watched any other of my episodes. This is how you know, again, fake friends, they don't watch your other episodes. It's
See,
okay.
there's this other component these days of people thinking because you like their posts on Instagram or you watch their podcast, that is the measure of friendship. But a true measure, but no, that's a different podcast. That's just...
I don't know what he's saying. Have friends like Gervaz said, it'll be fun, they said. It's not fun. It's great in some aspects, but pick your struggle. But yeah, so this is it. This is probably the longest one that I've done because, again, I've not kept track. You guys, if you see the background is different, you see the lighting is different. It's because people have decided to change it up. But anyways, it's fine. We're not going to go into that. But yeah, so thank you for coming through. We've been talking about this for a while, so I'm very, very glad that we can finally get this done and over with.
Glad to be here.
And yeah, see you guys in the next... Oh, thank you so much for listening, or thank you for watching if you're watching. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye!